Aaliyah Boston, a couple of Gamecocks back there in Indiana as Raven Johnson goes 10th overall tonight.
A single, dismissive hand gesture changed the trajectory of women's basketball forever and sparked a furious, organized fan rebellion that absolutely no one saw coming. When you picture modern sports rivalries, you might think of buzzer beaters, heated trash talk, or post-game scuffles. But the boiling tension between Caitlin Clark, Raven Johnson, and the fiercely loyal fan bases surrounding them goes far deeper than anything ever recorded on a stat sheet. This is a sprawling saga of public humiliation, silent, calculated revenge, explosive media narratives, and a newly minted, aggressively protective fan base that has recently decided to hit a professional sports league where it hurts the most, right in their wallets. To truly understand why thousands of furious supporters are suddenly refusing to buy tickets, canceling their television packages, and engaging in financial warfare against opposing teams, you have to rewind the clock to the exact moment the ultimate disrespect was televised to millions of people around the globe. It was the 2023 Final Four in Dallas, Texas, and the entire sports world was absolutely hypnotized by the long-range magic of the Iowa Hawkeyes and their superstar guard. During a crucial, high-stakes possession against the heavily favored, undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks, Raven Johnson caught the ball behind the three-point line. Johnson wasn't just a random player. She had been the #1 high school point guard recruit in the country, a proven champion with immense talent. But instead of closing out to defend her, Caitlin Clark simply stopped in her tracks, locked eyes with Johnson, and dismissively waved her hand, actively daring her to shoot the ball. It was a brutal, incredibly calculated sign of disrespect that instantly went viral, dominating social media timelines, sports debate networks, and casual conversations for weeks on end. Clark's wave-off wasn't just a clever defensive strategy designed to exploit a scouting report. It was a loud, public declaration that she fundamentally did not respect Johnson's game. The internet, known for being ruthlessly unforgiving, immediately ran with the moment. Endless memes flooded every platform, highlighting the exact second the golden girl of college basketball humiliated the defending national champions. And the psychological fallout for the young athlete on the receiving end was completely devastating. But what the flashing cameras and the laughing sports pundits didn't capture was the deeply dark reality unfolding behind closed locker room doors. The aftermath of that single viral clip pushed Raven Johnson to the absolute brink of walking away from the sport entirely. While the entire world was busy crowning a brand new basketball queen and celebrating the unprecedented television ratings she brought with her, Johnson was quietly spiraling into a deep, agonizing period of self-doubt. She later revealed in highly emotional interviews that the relentless, non-stop mocking and the endless, inescapable loop of that single play broke her confidence entirely. She spent days crying in her dorm room, deleting her social media apps, and seriously questioning if she had what it took to continue playing at an elite level. And the mental toll of becoming an international internet punchline overnight is a crushing weight that very few athletes ever truly recover from. And Johnson found herself trapped in an exhausting cycle of depression, avoiding public spaces and questioning her entire future. It was a quiet, unseen tragedy playing out in the shadows while the mainstream media continued to endlessly praise and elevate the very player who had humiliated her on the biggest stage imaginable. But just when it seemed like her promising career might quietly fade away into the forgotten background of someone else's highlight reel, a legendary figure stepped in and orchestrated an intervention that would change the course of basketball history. South Carolina head coach Dawn Staley adamantly refused to let her star defender be mentally destroyed by a fleeting viral moment. Staley, who is widely known for her fierce loyalty, uncompromising toughness, and brilliant psychological management of her players, essentially rebuilt Raven Johnson from the ground up during that grueling offseason. They spent countless, exhausting hours in an empty gym, but they weren't just working on jump shots or defensive footwork. Staley was actively rewiring Johnson's mental toughness and transforming her heartbreak into a dangerous weapon. Staley directly challenged her young point guard to take all of that intense anger, all of that public embarrassment, and the thousands of cruel comments, and channel them into a singular, undeniable, laser-like focus. Well, this wasn't just about getting better at the game of basketball anymore. This was about executing a long-term, meticulously crafted plan for absolute retribution. Johnson famously dubbed the upcoming season her personal revenge tour, completely changing her physique, her mindset, and her aggression. She spent every waking moment obsessively studying the exact movements, tendencies, and weaknesses of the player who had turned her into a national joke. And as fate would have it, the universe has a very funny, almost cinematic way of setting the perfect stage for payback. Fast forward to the highly anticipated 2024 National Championship game in Cleveland, Ohio, and the script was about to be violently flipped. Iowa and South Carolina met once again on the absolute biggest stage imaginable, eye-drawing a record-shattering television audience of nearly 19 million viewers. But this time, Raven Johnson stepped onto the hardwood as a completely different, fully weaponized player. She was deployed by Dawn Staley with one incredibly specific, high-pressure mission: completely lock down the greatest, most prolific scorer in the history of college basketball. From the moment the opening tip went up, Johnson transformed into a relentless, inescapable shadow. She picked up her target full court, relentlessly denied her the ball, fought through every single screen with vicious intensity, and played a brand of suffocating physical defense that left the high-powered Iowa offense looking completely paralyzed in the second half. The revenge was absolute, undeniable, and poetic. South Carolina captured the national title, finishing their historic season perfectly undefeated, and Johnson's unforgettable defensive masterclass became the ultimate, definitive answer to the previous year's disrespect. She had successfully drawn the ultimate blueprint on exactly how to dismantle the most hyped player of this generation, but the massive ripple effects of that aggressive defensive performance were about to shatter the fanbase in ways that absolutely nobody could have predicted. The very moment the final buzzer sounded and the confetti fell, the public narrative began to shift with violent speed. The fiercely protective, incredibly vocal legion of fans backing the Iowa superstar simply didn't just accept the loss as a part of the game. Instead, they immediately began to construct a widespread narrative that their favorite player was being unfairly targeted, maliciously bullied, and physically battered on the court. The aggressive, hard-nosed, relentless style of play that Johnson utilized to secure the championship was suddenly painted by a massive segment of the internet as dirty, out of bounds, and intentionally malicious. This wasn't just passionate fandom expressing disappointment anymore. It was the explosive birth of a deeply toxic online culture that viewed any form of physical defense against their idol as a deeply personal attack. They swarmed comment sections, harassed opposing players, and demanded that referees step in to protect the face of the sport. As the collegiate careers of these generational stars finally came to an end and the highly anticipated transition to the professional leagues began, this intense, protective paranoia only magnified, setting the perfect stage for an unprecedented financial protest. But the professional ranks of the WNBA were about to provide a brutal, completely unforgiving reality check to this new wave of fans. When the Golden Girl officially entered the WNBA as the #1 overall draft pick, the hardened, battle-tested veteran players of the league had already taken incredibly detailed notes from the Raven Johnson Revenge Tour. The defensive blueprint to stop the rookie sensation was crystal clear. Be overwhelmingly physical, be constantly relentless, and do not let her breathe for a single second. Almost immediately, the professional games became incredibly physical battles, with established veteran players delivering hard fouls, intense full-court pressure, and strategic bumps that perfectly echoed the exact same defensive strategies seen in the national championship game. The veterans essentially wanted to welcome the highly touted rookie to the gritty, unapologetic reality of professional basketball. But the newly minted massive wave of mega fans completely lost their collective minds. They flooded every corner of social media with furious accusations that the entire league was deeply jealous, incredibly bitter, and actively conspiring to intentionally injure the specific player who was single-handedly bringing them unprecedented viewership, chartered flights, and sold-out arenas. The narrative of the mistreated, victimized superstar quickly reached a terrifying boiling point, and the outrage rapidly transformed from angry tweets and internet think pieces into massive, real-world financial consequences. The breaking point arrived when these highly dedicated, deeply invested supporters decided it was time to actively weaponize their wallets against the entire league. Furious over what they perceived as the WNBA's deliberate refusal to protect their star from the exact same Raven Johnson blueprint of physical, bruising basketball, a massive, highly coordinated movement began to rapidly take shape across online forums and social media networks. Thousands of fiercely loyal fans publicly announced they were officially boycotting tickets to all away games, aggressively refusing to spend a single dime in opposing arenas where they felt the local teams were deliberately trying to physically harm or unfairly target their favorite player. They mass canceled their WNBA League Pass streaming subscriptions, or outright refused to buy any league merchandise that didn't directly put money into the pockets of their specific idol, and actively campaigned to purposefully starve the opposing franchises of the massive, record-breaking revenue boosts they had been eagerly anticipating all season. It was a shocking, unprecedented financial standoff in the world of women's sports. The fans genuinely believed they held the ultimate economic power to force the league's executives to fundamentally change the officiating, alter the rules, and legally protect its biggest financial investment. Meanwhile, the league itself found its front office caught completely paralyzed between catering to this wildly lucrative, entirely new audience and fiercely maintaining the gritty, highly competitive integrity of the sport that the veteran players had built over decades. Yet just beneath the surface-level arguments over hard fouls, referee whistles, and ticket sales, a much darker, incredibly uncomfortable cultural divide was quietly being exposed to the world. This massive, league-wide boycott wasn't really just about a few hard fouls or intense defensive matchups. It brutally pulled back the curtain on deep-seated racial undertones, historical double standards, and glaring media biases that have quietly plagued women's basketball for decades. Longtime critics and veteran players quickly pointed out the stark, undeniable hypocrisy fueling the outrage. Historically, when black players like Raven Johnson played an intense, hard-nosed brand of defense, expressed fiery emotion, or engaged in typical on-court trash talk, a massive, vocal segment of the internet and mainstream sports media instantly labeled them as aggressive, classless, unhinged, or even dangerous. But when the celebrated superstar engaged in the exact same identical trash talk, shoved opponents, or openly complained to officials, it was almost universally praised by those exact same pundits as competitive fire, elite passion, and the undeniable swagger of a true winner. Traditional basketball purists, former professional athletes, and longtime veteran fans of the WNBA began to fiercely push back against the boycotters, arguing loudly that the newcomers simply didn't understand the fundamental historical nature of professional basketball. They argued that rookies have always been tested, that the league has always been physical, and that no one player is bigger than the game itself. This escalating tension created a massive, seemingly irreparable rift within the sports community, turning almost every single game into a highly toxic proxy war between those who deeply believed the new face of the league was being violently victimized and those who firmly believed she was simply being treated exactly like any other highly touted rookie entering a league full of grown, professional women. And as the eerie sight of empty seats at certain targeted away games started to make national headlines, the long-term future of this fragile sports ecosystem hung entirely in the balance. The stark financial reality of the WNBA dictates that every single ticket sold, every jersey purchased, and every television rating point is absolutely vital to the survival and expansion of the league. And this coordinated boycott movement has forced high-ranking executives into an incredibly difficult, almost impossible corner. The underlying question haunts the front office daily. Do you actively intervene, instruct referees to call tighter fouls, and risk entirely compromising the deeply competitive nature of the game to appease a massive, incredibly wealthy new demographic of fans? Or do you stand your ground, let the professional players settle their intense differences organically on the court, and risk the massive financial wrath of an organized, highly motivated boycott that could cost franchises millions of dollars? This entire saga, a bitter rivalry that originally started with a simple, split-second wave-off in a 2023 college game, has wildly mutated into a full-blown, league-wide cultural war. It has completely redefined how physical defense is perceived by the public, how modern fans weaponize their economic power to influence league operations, and how the mainstream media constantly frames the incredibly complex intersection of race, talent, privilege, and physical play. The sheer magnitude of this drama has transcended the sport of basketball entirely, becoming a regular talking point on national news broadcasts and cultural podcasts alike. As we look ahead to the highly anticipated future matchups, the massive television contracts looming on the horizon, and the inevitable highly charged moments these specific athletes will inevitably cross paths again on the hardwood, one has to genuinely wonder if the game will ever be able to return to simply being just a game. The deeply dramatic, endlessly fascinating saga between Caitlin Clark, the brilliant defensive mind of Raven Johnson, and the entire league of professional players who now dare to defend her leaves us all with a lingering, deeply thought-provoking question. At what exact point does the fierce, protective loyalty of a fan base officially cross the line from simply supporting a superstar to actively tearing apart and destroying the very sport they claim to love so much?